Lydia thought she was raising her daughter, but the DNA results said otherwise. In that moment, everything she believed about love, truth, and motherhood shattered. The cameras stopped rolling. What happened next left the entire audience in silence. It started with one envelope, a piece of paper that didn't just expose a secret. It rewrote an entire life. But what if the truth you're searching for turns out to be the one that breaks you? Would you still open it? The studio lights glared down like interrogation lamps. Lydia sat at the edge of her seat, hands clasped tightly, her knuckles pale against the dark fabric of her dress. Across from her, Dr. Phil's calm, steady voice filled the room, but his eyes said something else. Compassion, caution, a kind of knowing that made her heart race faster. On the table between them lay the envelope, yellow, creased, heavy with finality. Inside it, the truth about the last 16 years of Lydia's life. Mark sat beside her, jaw tight, his wedding ring glinting under the lights. He hadn't said a word since the commercial break. You could hear the air conditioning hum over the silence of two people waiting for their world to change. Dr. Phil looked down at the paper, then up at Lydia. Before we open this, he said, I need you to take a deep breath. Because whatever's inside here, it's going to change everything. Lydia nodded, eyes already wet. I just want to know, she whispered. I can handle the truth. The envelope tore open with a soft rip. The sound was microscopic but deafening. Dr. Phil read the page quietly to himself, his eyes flicking across the lines, his expression tightening with every word. Then silence. The audience leaned forward. Mark reached out, but Lydia didn't move. The world seemed to hold its breath. Finally, Dr. Phil folded the paper and looked up. Lydia, he said softly, what if this test doesn't say what you think it does? Her heart stopped. What are you saying? She asked. Dr. Phil placed the report face down on the table. We'll get there, he said. But first, we need to understand how we got here. The camera panned out. Lydia's trembling hand hovered over the table. The envelope sat there like a loaded gun. Because before the truth could be told, we had to go back. What would you do if one piece of paper could rewrite your entire life story? 3 weeks before that stage light burned down on her, Lydia was standing in her kitchen, rinsing dishes after dinner. The hum of the dishwasher filled the silence. Her daughter, Emily, was upstairs, music playing through the floorboards, loud but familiar. Safe. Normal. Then her phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. She almost ignored it until she saw the words. You should know Emily isn't yours. Lydia froze. For a moment, she thought it was a cruel prank. Some random troll, some spam text meant to rattle her. But then came the second message. Check the hospital records from the night she was born. Ask about the power outage. The plate slipped from her hand, clattering into the sink. Water splashed across her sweater. She just stood there, staring at those words, her heartbeat drumming in her ears. For years, there had been whispers. Family friends who'd commented, she doesn't look much like you, does she? Nurses who'd avoided eye contact when Lydia brought up the strange billing mix-up from 16 years ago. But Lydia had always brushed it off. Because when you love someone, you don't question blood. You trust your memories. You trust your heart. That night, though, something changed. She couldn't sleep. Every glance at Emily's baby photos made her stomach twist. There were little things she'd never noticed. The eye color that didn't match, the birthmark that seemed out of place. By morning, she had convinced herself she was being paranoid. But the message haunted her like an echo she couldn't unhear. When she told her husband Mark about it, he sighed and said, LYD, please. This is ridiculous. She's our daughter. He kissed her forehead and walked out of the room. But deep down, Lydia saw the flicker of doubt in his eyes. Days later, a producer from the Dr. Phil show called. They were working on a new segment about family secrets, when the truth hurts. The producer said they'd read a submission Lydia had sent years ago about a mysterious hospital mix-up that was never resolved. It felt like fate knocking twice. This could bring you peace, the producer said. We can help you get answers. Real ones. Lydia hesitated. What if the truth destroyed everything she'd built? What if it wasn't a mistake? What if it was her fault? But then she thought about Emily. about her daughter's smile, her laughter, the way she called her mom without hesitation. If there was even a chance someone had stolen that truth from them, Lydia needed to know. The next day, she said yes. Dr. Phil's team arranged for DNA testing. Swabs were taken, papers signed, cameras prepared. But there was one thing no one could predict. Someone else already knew what those results would show, and they didn't want them opened. That night, before the flight to Los Angeles, Lydia's phone buzzed again. Same number. New message. You're not ready for what you'll find. She dropped the phone. Her hand shook. Somewhere upstairs, Emily laughed at something on her laptop. The sound of innocence Lydia now feared she'd never hear the same way again. Would you still chase the truth if you knew it could cost you the life you love most? The next morning in Los Angeles, everything looked calm, but the air behind the scenes was electric. Producers were setting up camera angles, microphones clipped, lights tested. Lydia tried to smile, but her nerves betrayed her. Every breath felt like it echoed in her chest. Backstage, she caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror. Pale, trembling, eyes heavy from sleepless nights. "You're doing this for Emily," she whispered. "For the truth." But the truth was already moving toward her. During the pre-interview, one of Dr. Phil's producers quietly approached with a note. "Lydia," he said, "we traced the anonymous messages." Her stomach dropped. "Who was it?" The producer hesitated. "It came from someone in your family." A name appeared on the paper. Rachel. Her sister. Lydia's mouth went dry. She hadn't spoken to Rachel in 10 years. Not since their mother's funeral. The day everything between them shattered over money, guilt, and words that couldn't be taken back. When Dr. Phil's team confronted Rachel, she didn't deny it. "I sent the messages," she said, her voice shaking. But not to hurt her. Rachel claimed she'd been haunted by something she overheard years ago. A nurse, late at night, whispering about a mix-up at the hospital maternity ward. A power outage. Babies switched. One family told nothing. Another too afraid to speak. At first, it sounded like the plot of a movie. But Rachel had proof, a file she'd kept hidden for years. Inside were copies of medical forms, birth timestamps that didn't match, and the signature of a nurse who'd disappeared soon after. When Lydia heard this, she couldn't breathe. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, her voice breaking. Rachel looked down. "Because I thought no one would believe me. And because I didn't want you to hate me again." That line cut deeper than Lydia expected. Hate. She hadn't thought about that word in years. She had buried it under motherhood, under routine, under pretending things were fine. Dr. Phil, in his calm but surgical tone, said, "Rachel, if this is true, you understand that you've been sitting on a truth that's affected multiple lives for 16 years. Rachel nodded, tears streaking her face. "I know, but this was bigger than both of us. I couldn't carry it anymore." As producers dug deeper, they uncovered a paper trail, a chain of missing hospital records, handwritten notes replaced by digital copies that didn't match. And then a name, Nurse Dana Walker, retired, living quietly in Arizona. Dr. Phil's team reached out to her, and to their surprise, she agreed to speak, but not on camera. "I can't," she said over the phone. "Not yet. But I know what happened." The tone in her voice wasn't guilt. It was fear. When Lydia heard that, she felt a pit open in her stomach. This wasn't just a rumor. It was a buried story clawing its way to the surface. Rachel agreed to come on the show, but only under one condition. "Lydia has to let me tell the truth on camera. All of it." The audience would soon watch two sisters, once inseparable, now divided by years of silence and a single secret, face each other under the harsh glow of national television. As Lydia stood in the wings, waiting for her cue, her heart pounded like a drum in her chest. She saw Rachel walk onto the stage, eyes red but steady. The applause faded. Lydia took a breath. Every step toward that stage felt like walking toward a cliff. Dr. Phil's voice cut through the tension. "We're here today to uncover the truth, not to destroy a family, but to find out what really happened 16 years ago." The audience leaned forward. Rachel turned toward her sister. "You deserve to know, Lydia," she said softly. "But it's not what you think." The lights dimmed, and for the first time in years, Lydia had no idea what her sister was about to say. Is forgiveness possible when betrayal feels justified? The studio that morning didn't feel like a TV set. It felt like a courtroom. The air was thick with quiet anticipation, lights humming softly above the stage. The audience whispered, phones tucked away, eyes locked on the two women who hadn't spoken in a decade. Lydia sat rigid, her fingers twisted together in her lap. Rachel, across from her, tried to hold her gaze but couldn't. Dr. Phil walked in, voice steady but low. "We're here to find the truth," he said. But truth doesn't always heal right away. Sometimes it breaks before it rebuilds. Between them sat the DNA test kit. Small, unassuming, sterile, yet it felt heavier than the air around it. Lydia stared at the swabs and sealed envelopes like they were weapons. Emily wasn't in the audience today. Dr. Phil's producers had decided it was too emotional for a teenager. She was backstage, watching on a monitor, her expression blank. "Lydia," Dr. Phil said gently, "are you ready to do this?" She nodded, though her voice was barely there. "If this is the only way to know the truth, then yes." The camera zoomed in as she swabbed the inside of her cheek. A moment later, the same was done for Rachel. Not because she was suspected of anything, but to verify the family line, to connect the dots. Dr. Phil held the samples for a moment before handing them off to a producer. "We'll have these results by the end of the show," he said. "Whatever they say, we'll face it together." Time blurred after that. Commercial breaks, counseling sessions, B-roll footage. Lydia could barely remember any of it. She just sat there, trying to quiet the voices in her head. The what-ifs, the memories, the flashes of Emily's first words, her first steps, the scraped knees and late-night talks. Every frame of her motherhood now flickered with doubt. Then came the envelope. Dr. Phil's producer, her face pale, carried it in like it was radioactive. She handed it to him wordlessly, her eyes down. The audience went silent. Lydia's chest tightened as Dr. Phil broke the seal. He looked at the page, and for a long, unbearable moment, he didn't say a word. His lips pressed together, his brow furrowed slightly. Then he exhaled. "Lydia," he said softly, "this result, it confirms that you are not Emily's biological mother." The room went still. Lydia blinked, as if her mind refused to process the words. That's not possible," she whispered. "That can't be right." Mark, sitting beside her, turned pale. Rachel's hands flew to her mouth. Someone in the audience gasped. Dr. Phil continued carefully, "The test was conducted by an independent lab. There's no mistake. Biologically speaking, Emily isn't your child." Lydia's breathing became shallow. The color drained from her face. "But she's my baby," she said, voice trembling. "I held her. I was there." Dr. Phil leaned forward. "I know this hurts, but we need to find out how this happened." Before anyone could speak again, a crew member approached, whispering something urgently into Dr. Phil's ear. His expression shifted. For a split second, he looked truly shaken, a rare sight for the calm, unflappable host. He straightened up slowly. "We're going to pause filming," he said quietly. "There's something we need to confirm before continuing." The cameras cut. The studio fell into a hush. Audience members murmured, unsure what had happened. Lydia sat frozen, staring at the floor, her mind unraveling in slow motion. Behind the scenes, the producer pulled Dr. Phil aside, whispering fast. "We found something else," she said. "Hospital archives, another baby, same birthday, same delivery wing, different parents." Dr. Phil's face hardened. "Are you telling me?" She nodded. "It's possible the children were switched." The gravity of those words hung in the air. When Dr. Phil returned to Lydia, his tone was different. No longer for the cameras, just for her. "Lydia," he said, "we may have found another piece to this puzzle. I want to handle this next part off camera." She looked up, eyes hollow. "What are you saying?" He placed a hand gently over hers. "I'm saying this might not just be a mistake. It might be something much bigger." The cameras stopped rolling. The stage went dark. But behind those curtains, the real story was just beginning. When truth collides with identity, which one survives? When the lights turned off and the audience was escorted out, the studio became eerily quiet. What had begun as a televised family story was now a private investigation. one that no one expected to uncover. Dr. Phil called for a closed session. No cameras, no aplausos, just truth. Lydia sat in a smaller, dimly lit office on the studio lot, the kind of room where honesty didn't have to perform. Her hands were shaking as she held a cup of tea she didn't drink. Across from her, Dr. Phil leaned forward, elbows on his knees, voice steady but grave. "There's someone we need you to meet," he said. The door opened, and in walked an older woman, late 60s, silver hair tucked neatly under her glasses. Her hands trembled as she clutched a thin manila folder. Lydia's breath hitched. "This is Dana Walker," Dr. Phil said gently. She was a nurse at the hospital where Emily was born. The woman's eyes darted down. "Mrs. Collins," she began, voice barely above a whisper, "I've carried this secret for 16 years. I can't carry it anymore." Lydia's fingers tightened around the cup. "What are you saying?" Dana opened the folder. Inside were photocopies of hospital forms, faded ID tags, a shift report, and a page labeled Incident Log, Power Failure. She swallowed hard. "There was a power outage the night your daughter was born. Emergency generators failed for 6 minutes. In that time, we had multiple newborns in the nursery. No wristbands, no power to run verification. We thought we handled it, but when the lights came back on, 2 bassinets were switched." Lydia's voice cracked. "You're telling me my baby was given to someone else?" Dana nodded, tears forming. "The hospital buried it. We were told to stay silent or lose our licenses. They faked the paperwork. I tried to come forward once, but no one would listen." The words fell heavy, each one crushing Lydia's sense of self a little more. "Dora Filstone softened. We've located another family," he said. "They had a baby girl born the same night, in the same wing. The timelines match. She's 16 now and lives in Oregon." Lydia blinked. "My daughter? We don't know yet," Dr. Phil said carefully. "But all the evidence points that way." Her body went still. Tears filled her eyes. Not the sharp, angry kind, but the deep, hollow kind that come when the truth finally lands. Dana reached across the table, voice trembling. "I am so sorry, Mrs. Collins. You have every right to hate me. But I need you to know, you were meant to have her. The love you gave Emily, that was never a mistake." Lydia couldn't respond. Words didn't belong in that kind of silence. Later that evening, Emily entered the room. She had been waiting outside, unaware of the full story. Lydia stood and took her daughter's hands. "Sweetheart," she whispered, "they say you're not mine by blood." Emily looked confused. "But you are my mom." Those words cracked something open in the room, something sacred. Lydia fell into her arms, sobbing. "You will always be my daughter," she said. "No test can tell me otherwise." Dr. Phil, watching quietly, nodded. "Sometimes the truth doesn't set you free," he said softly. "It sets you apart, so you could decide who you really are." When the cameras came back days later, it wasn't for drama. It was for closure. Lydia sat in the same chair, calmer now, a quiet strength behind her eyes. "Family," she said to Dr. Phil, "isn't DNA. It's choice. It's the love you give, even when the truth hurts." And then, almost symbolically, she pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket, a handwritten letter addressed simply to the other mother. She slid it across the table. "I want to meet her," she said. The episode ended there. No aplausos, no music, just a close-up of the letter and Lydia's trembling hands. Because some stories don't end with the truth being revealed. They end with what we choose to do next. Could you open your heart to the person who unknowingly lived your child's life? It had been 3 months since the taping. The world had moved on, but Lydia's world had changed forever. The letter she wrote to the other mother had made its way across the country, folded inside an envelope that carried both hope and fear. She didn't know what to expect: anger, denial, maybe silence. But one morning, as she poured coffee at her kitchen counter, the phone rang. A voice on the other end was calm, trembling, familiar in a way only shared pain can be. "Lydia, this is Caroline," the woman said. I think we need to talk." The 2 mothers decided to meet in private. No cameras, no producers, no studio lights, just 2 women trying to make sense of a mistake that had defined their lives. They met halfway between their homes, in a quiet park surrounded by autumn trees. Lydia arrived early, holding a small photo of Emily. Her Emily, tucked in her palm like a lifeline. When Caroline appeared, she was holding a photo too, a girl with Lydia's eyes. Her name was Hannah. The women sat across from each other on a wooden bench. For a moment, neither spoke. The wind moved the leaves. Children laughed in the distance, and the weight of 16 stolen years hung between them. Finally, Caroline said, "I used to think I knew what love was. Then I got your letter." Lydia's eyes filled. "I didn't write it to blame you. I just needed you to know she's loved. That even if she wasn't born to me, she's still mine." Caroline nodded, voice breaking. "And Hannah is mine. But sometimes when I see her laugh, I wonder if she got that from you." They both smiled through tears. The conversation unfolded not like confrontation, but confession. Two mothers, two families, one broken truth finally finding its balance. Caroline opened her purse and pulled out a folded document. "I did the test too," she said softly. "It's true. Hannah's your biological daughter." Lydia closed her eyes, the reality cutting deep. It wasn't just theory anymore. The truth was ink and numbers and undeniable proof. But instead of despair, something unexpected washed over her. Peace. She looked up and said, "Then she's been loved twice over." That moment, quiet, untelevised, unseen by millions, was where healing began. Weeks later, with Dr. Phil's team facilitating privately, the two families met for the first time. Emily and Hannah faced each other nervously. Both 16, both raised under different roofs, yet sharing the same history written by someone else's hands. They looked at each other for a long time before Emily smiled. "Guess that makes us kind of sisters, huh?" Hannah laughed through tears. "Yeah, sisters by accident." The room softened. Two families, broken by truth but bound by love, shared pizza, stories, and a strange, fragile laughter that sounded like forgiveness. Dr. Phil watched from the corner, voice low as the cameras rolled again for a brief closing interview. "When truth shows up," he said, "it rarely knocks politely. It crashes through the front door. But what matters is what we do after the dust settles." Lydia nodded. "For a long time, I thought truth would destroy my family. But it didn't. It rebuilt it, just differently." And as the camera slowly panned across the room, two mothers, two daughters, two fathers, the feeling wasn't tragedy. It was grace. Dr. Phil closed the episode not with applause, but reflection. "Family isn't who shares your blood," he said. "It's who stays when the truth finally comes out." The screen faded to black. Lydia's voice played softly over the credits. "If I've learned anything, it's this: love doesn't care what a piece of paper says. It remembers the late nights, the scraped knees, the lullabies. The truth didn't take my daughter away. It gave me too." Silence followed, the kind that means people are thinking. When truth finds you, will you run from it or rebuild because of it? If this story moved you, share it with someone who believes family is more than blood. Have you ever faced a truth that changed everything? Tell your story in the comments. It might help someone find forgiveness today. And if you'd like more true stories about family, secrets, and redemption, don't forget to subscribe.